Okay.
Okay, so I am with Maria Kuhn. Is that your name?
Yeah, Kuhn.
And you are you have started a organization called Drive Us Forward, and it's a Gen Z organization to lobby for the safety of cars for women, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, so I just want to say normally when I interview somebody, I have a little bit pre-interview before we start recording. I didn't want to do any pre-interview because I want all of the discovery of who you are and how you came to this to be recorded. Um, I was set up with you as advocates via Caroline Criado Perez, who wrote Invisible Women. And I reached out to her after my car crash. She had written an entire chapter on the lack of female crash test dummies in her book, which I loved. And I read back in 2019. And in the ambulance, sorry, I have blood in my mouth.
Oh,
Yeah. In the, sorry, it just keeps creeping in there. In the ambulance, as I was being driven to the hospital, I kept shouting, apparently, this is sexism. This is sexism. Sorry, there's so much blood in my mouth.
oh,
So I have this deep gash between my lips and my gums, and I have 20 stitches holding it together, but sometimes when I talk, it comes undone. So anyway, Caroline said, oh, you have to reach out to Maria. And then I looked at your Instagram and I looked at your Instagram page for your organization. And I thought, I definitely have to reach out to Maria. First of all, tell me your story, how you came to this knowledge of the lack of safety for females in cars and how you started your organization.
definitely. So I kind of got into it, maybe in a similar way to how you did. I survived a head-on car crash with my family back in 2019.
Who was
My mom and
driving and where were you sitting?
my father was driving. I was in the middle back seat, and my mom was to my right, and then my dad and brother were in the front. Um, and so we were actually on Christmas vacation at the time. And yeah, a car came around a corner and kind of cut into our lane and hit us head on. So my mom and I both suffered severe injuries. I required emergency surgery, and a semester off from college to heal.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. So I found out afterwards what happened was because the seatbelt didn't fit me right, instead of kind of stopping my forward momentum by grabbing onto the kind of tougher, pelvic bones, it instead slid up and caught my stomach and ruptured my intestine.
I have the same thing. It's
Oh,
right. It was here rather than down here.
exactly.
Sorry, you got
Oh,
to see my gross stomach, but anyway.
not gross, definitely not gross. I'm so sorry that happened to you too. Um, that has been, just a side note, like one of the really shocking parts about this journey for me is like every time I share my story, someone's like, that happened to me or my aunt or my cousin or my sister or my friend, and it's like, it's just something I think that, we don't talk about a lot, is the true impact of like this car culture on our society. But anyway, as an aside, so of course we survived this crash. And when I got home from the hospital, there was a letter waiting for me on my bed. And my grandma had cut out a Consumer Reports article, like with a pair of scissors, cut it out, snail mailed it to me. And it was this now famous Consumer Reports article that described this issue. And I had not heard anything about it before this. And so because I had a medical term off from college, I had some time to research. And so I began to kind of dive in from there. And of course, it was just astounding. I mean, it's really upsetting.
Yeah, the deeper I dove into this while I was in the hospital and then out of the hospital, the angrier I got. I mean, I knew the basics because of Caroline's book, but I didn't know
Exactly.
the extent of the fact that the car manufacturers have known for decades that, for example, this is a airbag injury. My car crash, actually, when I got the footage. It's not that bad. I mean, I was driving 20 miles per hour. This guy drove in front of me and I hit his car because I couldn't avoid it.
Right.
And it was the airbag that made this. So what
Oh,
the hospital doctor said is that it's like a bullet to the, right where it comes out, it goes 100 to 200 miles per hour, which is the same effect. That's why it's round as a bullet.
Oh my gosh, I hadn't heard that before. That is so wild. Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
It's okay. It's okay. Normally, like the laceration of my mouth would be caused by a piece of glass or something getting in there. This laceration is just caused by sheer force to the face. When you're 5'2", right?
Right.
You're sitting close to the driver's seat and you're
Right.
trying to see over the windshield and get and have the pedal at the same time. The other thing that happened is I was pressing the horn, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
now you can see the difference in my hands. Like this one's completely swollen. So it went like flying up and then this thing hit me in the face.
Right. Oh, I mean, the way that my injury was described to me in like an analogy by the doctors was like basically the seatbelt pinned my intestines against my spine. And so like a pressure ball or whatever, like you squeeze it and it pops.
Oh my God. So how are you feeling now? That's what I want to know. Are you okay now?
Thank you. Yeah, I am so grateful. We are all okay. Able-bodied, healthy. The only lasting consequence I had for my injury was because I had surgery, there's a lot of scar tissue in there. And so my intestines are narrower than they typically would be. So there's just some food that I can't eat, like gluten, for example, or else it like really gets inflamed. So, all things considered, really not so bad. But that is like kind of the...
How did your dad and brother and mom survive?
So my dad and brother were completely fine. Wow. Which we are so grateful for because, of course, on a head-on crash, the front two seats are like closest to the point of impact. They should be in the most danger. So that time we were very thankful that cars were designed to protect them. Yeah. And my mom, she did not require emergency surgery, but she had her sternum was fractured as well as her tailbone. And she suffered a pretty severe concussion. And so she's okay now. Yeah, we're okay now.
And this was back in 2019.
Yeah, it was December 26, 2019.
And then COVID hit a year later.
Yes. Yep. Like
a few months later.
A few months later. Yeah. It was funny because at the beginning of the pandemic, my mom and I were doing the same thing as we had been before because we were pretty much bedridden for a while. So we were like, what's this? This is fine for us.
Yeah. Right. That's so, yeah. So when I noticed that this organization that you started, Drive Us Forward, was just started in March of 2023. So I guess good timing on my crash that I get to talk to you now. And tell me how you started it and what are your plans for the organization and how can we help?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay. So basically for a little timeline, I was in the crash in December 2019. And then a couple months following, once I was not bedridden anymore, I applied to work in the Senate. So I moved to DC and worked on the Hill. And so I kind of got a taste for like how regulations are made, what kind of policy would actually impact a situation like this. I myself was not very familiar with like DOT procedures or anything before. Right. So that was a really great like learning opportunity and access to a ton of resources. And then home for the pandemic, and then took some time just to focus on school and kind of get my life back together. And then I published my first piece in my hometown paper, the Portland Press Herald, in April 2021. So that was my first.
In Portland, Maine?
Portland, Maine, yeah. Yeah. So it's actually Portland behind me. But yeah, published my first piece, just like a short op-ed about the issue, like kind of from a survivor's perspective. And then I started meeting other survivors online kind of from there. So I connected with Hannah Shank, who's an incredible author. And she and I co-wrote our piece together for Fast Company that was quite successful, trended #1 on Apple News, pretty widely read, which was amazing. And then I published a follow-up piece for them. And then I wrote a piece for Miss Magazine. And kind of through all of that, I was able to land some meetings with like, folks in the Department of Transportation, members of Congress, industry executives, the CEO of the company who builds the dummies, all kinds of things like that. And while it was such an honor to be kind of in these rooms, in these meetings, having these discussions, it became very clear that this was not this was not going to be enough. Like this, just me, this one person with kind of like a band, a few other folks, was not going to be sufficient to make the kind of change that we need, because we're up against such massive like industry and historical institutional forces that it just takes a lot more than just like a few people being like, hey, we should probably fix this, right?
Well, actually,
So,
I want to take a break here to read something that
sure.
I just read on your Instagram, not your Instagram, but the Drive Us Forward Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
It says it's the top one. It says in the 2005, the US government was debating using female crash test dummies in car safety testing. General Motors, Public Citizen, and others supported putting a female dummy in the test. GM even wanted to replace the male dummy with a female because protecting the most vulnerable passenger protects everyone better. But Nissan, Ford, Chrysler, and others lobbied against it. They said the benefits of testing for women were, quote, statistically minor. Please, I'm going to get angry. They said it could, quote, have adverse effects, although no specifics were given. Then you go on to say, if I can actually do this. So because Ford, Nissan, and Chrysler lobbied against it without evidence, the government decided not to test with female crash test dummies. It wasn't until 2011 models that the government finally put female dummies in the crash testing, and the effects were definitely not statistically minor. They only put female dummies in the rear and passenger seats. That thing, like not in the driver's seat. And found that these seats were way more dangerous for women than men. That's only with female dummies in the rear and passenger seats. Imagine how bad and true the ratings would be if they tested with accurate female crash test dummies in the driver's seat. Anyway, I mean, for me, what I was thinking as I was in the hospital is this is going to require not just your organization and not just people helping to drive your organization, but we have to actually take on the entire motor vehicles associate, like all of the manufacturers, in the same way tobacco was brought down in terms of having to put those safety labels on their boxes and all the other stuff that they had to do and not advertise to kids. Like, this is something that's either a class action suit against the makers of cars, or we have to lobby the car manufacturers as well. I mean, this is about design. It's not just about the female crash test dummies, which would test and show them that their cars are patently unsafe for women. They have known that airbags that cause this injury to me are far more dangerous to women in front seat crashes, driver crashes, than to anyone else. You have excellent statistics on your website as well.
Thank you.
But we have to actually make sure not only that they're tested and shown to be dangerous, but that the design has to change. You know, right now I'm looking into getting pedal extenders. I mean, I'm not getting in a car for any time soon, and I don't think I'm going to buy a new car because I just found out what my insurance is going to pay, and it's not going to pay for a new car. It's like I'm going to be without a car, but I will be driving my boyfriend's car, and I want to look into getting pedal extenders for that so that I can actually drive far enough away from the steering wheel that I don't get hit in the face again if some idiot pulls into a intersection and ignores a stop sign. Like, we can't ignore idiots in the world, but we can be prepared to undergo, you know, these crashes in a safe manner. Meaning we have to not be next to the airbags. We have to have seatbelts that take breasts into account. Like, seatbelts don't take breasts into account.
Right. Right. I completely agree with all of that. And like just a few notes. So like, women are actually way less likely to cause car crashes than men, because men are more likely to drive recklessly, drive under the influence, not wear their seatbelt, drive distracted, all sorts of different things that make us way less likely to cause crashes. Right. And another interesting point about the pedal extenders is that they actually, some like luxury car brands are beginning to offer adjustable pedals. But if it's a luxury car brands that are the only ones that are doing it, then only really wealthy people are, you know, have access to these safety features. And it just is like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it is certainly, in my opinion, a big part of this is the financial influence of these automakers. ProPublica just released like an amazing research piece last week about how NHTSA had agreed that basically these truck underride protections were necessary. And then they met with a bunch of automakers and then they all changed their mind. And we're like, actually, we don't need this at all. And so it's like, they're not even trying to hide that these automakers have an outside influence on their decisions. And it's also just so incredibly common for NHTSA and DOT leaders to just do the old revolving door, leave their government positions, and then go be super high up at a car company. It's like, it's
what about Pete
infuriating.
Buttigieg? Like, he's trying to get female crash test dummies. Have you met with him yet?
I haven't met with him directly. And so I have met with the Department of Transportation before, like senior officials there. And this is going to be a little upsetting to hear, so just fair warning. I asked them why, they wouldn't just put the current female dummy, the hybrid 3/5, in the driver's seat like tomorrow. And he said, word for word, it's a simple matter of economics. How many tests do you want us to run?
Jesus fucking Christ.
So, although I do have hope that they may be looking to implement and incorporate like the more accurate Thor 5F, Thor 5th female crash test dummy soon, I do not believe that they will be putting in the driver's seat, of their own accord.
And also, let's just say that the female crash test dummies that they are testing are the same size as a 12-year-old boy, correct?
They are.
They're just correct. Like, they're not really female. They're 12-year-old boys. They don't have breasts. They don't have different internal organs. They don't have different bones than we have. I was just diagnosed with osteoporosis. Like, that's another issue too. Like, older women, we go through menopause, we're going to get osteoporosis. Like, we have to test for our bones and our bone structure. And don't even get me started.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's the organs, the muscles, the bones, like neck structure, abdomen. I mean, it's everything.
Sorry, I got more blood in my mouth as I get angry.
I'm so sorry.
Now, look, my crash was a week ago, so I'm still dealing with the after effects, and this hand particularly is really in a lot of pain. But so how can the most people that look at my Substack are middle-aged women like me, and we are not Gen Z. We have Gen Z kids. Like, my kids are 28, 26, and what's my little one? 17. So I have 2 Gen Z kids and 1 millennial kid. But Gen X, we now have cash to spend. How can we help your organization? Do you have a link that I can put up on my Substack? Do you have ways that we can help just in terms of writing letters? Like, what is the best thing for women of my generation to help so that cars are safer for us and for our children?
I really appreciate that. So there are a couple really, really critical ways that you all can help. So although we are a Gen Z organization and like we're led and governed by Gen Z folks, it will take all of us to make a difference. So there's a number of ways. So first, we have a petition. I will send you the link, and we can be gathering signatures on there. We always accept donations. That helps us, get all of kind of our administrative organizational content stuff done, as well as more like kind of guerrilla tactics, which are wonderful. And there's also, there will be soon, fingers crossed, some kind of congressional action that we would love people to be calling their members of Congress about. So I can't quite get into specifics on that at this point, but I can give you some background, which is that in March of this year, actually the same day that our organization was founded, the Government Accountability Office released a report about NHTSA detailing basically everything that we already know.
I read that. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a great report. And you may have seen that at the bottom, they gave NHTSA 180 days to release a comprehensive plan on how they're going to fix this issue. And NHTSA agreed, which has never happened. But they are historically really terrible at meeting deadlines, and also are kind of famous for giving like nothing burger answers. They'll just be like, hey, yeah, this might be a problem. We'll keep researching it. But we don't want them to do that this time. We want them to commit to a specific action, specific timeline. And so we are looking to increase pressure both publicly and congressionally between now and September 4th, when that report is due, to be like, hey, we're all watching you. You're not going to get away with this, right? So we are hoping to see some, as I said, some congressional action on that soon. And I will certainly keep you updated on how we can work together to make that happen.
And so that's September 4th is the 180 days?
That's when it's due. Yeah. Okay. So we're looking to just really ramp up the attention and engagement on that between now and then.
Okay. I will help
So yeah.
however I can, and I will get my friends to help however I can. When I published the first article about female crash test dummies on my Substack last week, it got shared many, 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 many times,
Yes,
and
it
got
did.
passed around more than I thought it ever would be. And a lot of people wrote to me privately to say I had no idea, or I have a 5'2" daughter, or I'm 5'1". Oh my God. You know, we are not safe in cars.
No, we are not. And I think that is the most important strategy for this movement, is just telling as many people as you can, having everybody spread it to their own audience, right? And so you're kind of touching every different kind of, or all sorts of different kinds of folks across the country, because the biggest barrier, in my opinion, in like the public engagement on this issue is because it's like hidden on purpose. They make it very confusing on purpose. And, it's really hard to describe the issue in like 5 or 10 seconds because it's really complex, and, it's a decades old issue. And so as much as we can clarify it and spread awareness in like a digestible way, I think that's like the best thing that we can be doing.
Well, I can do it in a digestible way in 2 minutes. This injury would not have happened if they had tested female crash test dummies, because my car crash was not at a high speed. It was at a fairly low speed, and it was the deployment of the airbag that caused this injury, and caused the injury inside my mouth, which I can't show you, which has now been operated on twice. So, it's almost why I wanted to come talk to you today while I still have this injury, because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about 74% chance for women getting injured by car crashes than men. So right. I should not have been gravely injured, or even, medium injured by that car crash. I should not have been. It was not that fast. It would have been fine.
Right. I mean, we're looking at the consequences right here. And, speaking for myself, like, I and my family, we feel really lucky because we're all alive. It's like, yeah,
I feel really lucky too. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like we faced, stuff hurt for a while, but we're okay. And like thinking about all of the women, families, people who are affected, who don't stand up and get out of the car. I think that's, that's what we fight for, right?
We have a female friend who I wrote a story about her in the Atlantic in 2018 or 2019. I can't remember. Maddie Parrish, who was in the front seat of a car and did not survive. And she was my son's best friend growing up, and, she's not here anymore. So she was 23 when she was killed. And I just, it's sad that it took me until I had my own crash to even think about this. I had read about it in Caroline's book. I had thought about it, but I just hadn't pictured that I should immediately call my 5'0" daughter, who's up in Buffalo, driving every day in the snow, going to med school, get pedal extenders. I just had never thought about the fact that we are at grave risk right now.
Right now.
All of us.
Right.
Anyway, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I'm going to press stop on the recording and then stay on for a few minutes so I can talk. Okay.
That's perfect.
Record.